This is a book review for The Defiant, a true story of escape, survival, and resistance by Shalom Yaran. This is a story about a Jewish boy who lived in Poland when World War II started and the Germans invaded. The first aspect of the book revolves around his family and them moving around Poland to try and continue to escape the war and the Germans. It goes into detail of the difficulty of a family that has to move from town to town, how to maintain and get food, how to survive and stick together as a family. A great help to them was their large family and support system. They went to multiple family members' houses all over Poland and were given food and lodging. It was a great lesson in how important having a community there to help in case it is needed. Then it goes through living under German occupied rule. The book does a great job in explaining the constant fear and the things that were needed to be done to stay alive. How rumors and sort of knowing what would happen, but not really totally being sure as well. Then the reckoning came for the village that Shalom and his family were in. The Germans surrounded the town and began to round up all the Jewish people, where they would then bring them into barns, shoot one group, then make the next group pile the bodies up, then shoot that group, and on until the barn was full and they would set it on fire. Many people were shot, wounded, and not killed, and therefore burned to death. This is how the extermination went in the town the author was in. He and some others managed to escape into the woods. In the woods, the survivors built small communities. Food had to be stolen or being given to them. The author, his brother, and three other young men built an underground survival shelter and had lived there for the whole winter. Shalom and his brother joined the Soviet partisan movement, where they spent the next several years fighting the Nazis and setting up ambushes, blowing up trains, and other irregular activities, braving attacks, swamps, hunger, and all the other hardships that come with military camp, but one without proper supplies. All supplies had to be donated. If that didn't happen, then taken by force. As the war comes to an end, Shalom and his brother now have to escape the Soviet Union, which they were just fighting for. They then split up with his brother, going to France, and Shalom is smuggled through Europe and into Palestine. A theme throughout this book is survival in order to tell their story and to get revenge on those who committed these atrocities. There are also many stories of other people throughout the book as well, which are very compelling, but too much to include here. I would recommend this book. I enjoy people's individual stories. We all know the overview of World War II and the Holocaust, so it's nice to know how the person who went through it felt. The importance not just of what happened, but the need to move forward, that responsibility to move forward. Don't let the dead die in vain. I will end this review with an excerpt from the last pages of the book. I began to think of my future. I felt somewhat like a savage thrown into an unfamiliar society, sorely lacking in education and sophistication. The qualities I had developed while maturing into manhood, the ability to adapt to drastic lifestyles, and to the wits to cope with survival situations, were not greatly needed or appreciated anymore. Decency, honesty, and consideration, the values that had been instilled in me by my parents in what seemed like another lifetime, were there, under layers of different coping skills developed during crisis. Survival and revenge, my most basic needs, had become obsolete. My adolescence had slipped by without my going through the normal stages of growing up. My education was cut short after 6 grades of elementary school, and I had no experience in the game of dating or even in everyday relations with other people in a civilized society. After spending close to 7 years at war, here I was, at the age of 21, my dreams fulfilled. I was in Palestine, reunited with relatives. Now I had to acquire totally different skills and habits, to learn a profession and become self-sufficient, to learn tact in dealing with people, finesse. I had to overcome my need to rely on drink, so as to be able to feel relaxed. For years, I had dealt with transitions of status, from persecuted to fighter, to refugee, to free member of society. Now it was time to adapt to a new reality once again. First of all, I needed to find a job, and to continue with my education. Sarna went out, using her connections and friendship to help me get work. I had meanwhile looked into available evening classes to catch up on my education. Sarna took me to a friend who was in charge of a company supplying bottled gas and home ranges. After a brief interview, he offered me a job repairing customers' ranges to start after I had recuperated from my operation. I would get a bicycle to get to customers' homes around Tel Aviv. After a certain number of repairs a day, the rest of the day would be mine. It was a good arrangement for me because if I worked efficiently, I would have more time to study. I enrolled in the fall evening classes at the Montefiore School to prepare for examinations for the high school equivalency diploma. The length of the course would depend on my abilities. But first, I needed to have my operation. In June, I was successfully operated on. It amazed me that there were no complications or permanent damage after years of neglect. Afterwards, I was sent to a convalescence home for 6 weeks and told to be careful not to do anything strenuous. I was not in physical pain, but was not allowed to be active. So, for the first time in years, I had a lot of time on my hands. I knew there was something important I had to do. This was when I sat down and compulsively wrote down what had happened to me in the last 7 years. I spent hours writing furiously each day in notebooks brought to me by Cerna. I wrote in Polish because at that time it was the language I knew best. I did not have the tools and the skills to write my story as well as I would have liked, but I knew that over the years the details of all that I had been through would be erased or blurred. It was vital to write it all down then, while the memories were still fresh in my mind. When I was through putting it all down on paper, I felt that I had completed my mission and was ready to start a new life in my own homeland.